It's like watching paint dry that last minute.
You got so quiet there.
I know, it's just like, whoa. All right, call the meeting to order. If you'll join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Pardon me. All right, next up, entertain a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
First by Troy, second by Rick. All those in favor? And that passes 7-0. Next up, recognition, Dr. Tomlinson.
Well, if it pleases the board, I'd like to invite Alicia Dale to come up to the front with me. Hi.
Hi.
Alicia's been recognized as the Classified Employee of the Month. She was nominated by Dr. Hucks and wrote up that that goes above and beyond to accommodate parents who are picking up their kids. She always has a pleasant disposition, is always happy to help. Not only that, but her happiness is infectious, and all the work that she does at Rock and Tire Club and over at Cornerstone is greatly appreciated, and we just want to recognize you and thank you for all the great things that you do for our kids. So thank you.
Would you like to give a speech?
No, don't get her talking.
I'd also like to ask Jeff Kinsey to come forward, please. How are you, sir? I wanted to take a second to recognize Jeff for his work with the Missouri School Boards Association. Recently, our school district was certified as a school safety specialist, Mr. Kinsey here, and different things, multi-tiered systems of support, legal aspects for schools, cyberbullying, cybersecurity, and went through trauma-informed and mental health resources, was trained, and is now a certified safety specialist for the state. And we wanted to thank you for your hard work in getting that and want to recognize you tonight and say great job.
Jeff, did you not want to talk at all?
I forgot my speech today.
All right, next month, we'll let you do it next month. All right, next up is the MSBA Delegate Report. Mr. McCown.
Just have a video of the break.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Missouri School Boards Association's Board Report for the month of November. We thank you for the opportunity to share some news and information during a few minutes of your board meeting. We begin with a look at the continuing impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on Missouri's public schools. School districts throughout the state are implementing the protocols and policies designed to keep students, teachers, and staff safe and healthy while keeping students in school. The new director of the Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services, Dawn Karoff, tells us one new option aimed at keeping students in school following an exposure to COVID-19 is called Test to Stay.
If they are close contact, can remain in school as long as that they're constantly being tested and they're consistently and correctly wearing masks. So it keeps kids in school. Also, the very important part of the student's education are the extracurricular activities. And the Test to Stay also allows them to participate in those activities. So yeah, it's just another option for schools to keep kids in the classroom.
Karoff says it's also important to take precautions against the seasonal flu as the weather turns colder. He says we can't count on another mild flu season this year.
And our fear is that people say, well, it's just going to be another mild year, but we can't predict that now. And certainly as students and teachers, parents are starting to get more indoors because it's starting to get a little cooler out. it's particularly worrisome. And now's really the time to get vaccinated. It takes a few weeks for the really full coverage from the influenza vaccine. We're getting close to Thanksgiving. So obviously now's the time that students, parents, teachers should get their annual influenza vaccine.
Updated school guidance for COVID-19 is posted on the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education's website. School districts throughout the state are continuing to struggle with the shortage of teachers. A new effort to recruit and retain teachers sponsored by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education is called Teach Missouri. Its goals are to elevate the teaching profession, improve the perception of being a teacher, attract the next generation of Missouri teachers, and develop a statewide recruitment system. Here's a public service announcement produced for Teach Missouri.
You'd make a great teacher. Teach has all you need to get started for free. On teach.org, you can search for state-approved teaching programs around the country and find in-person, online, and hybrid certification courses that fit you and your schedule. You can also find resources like stories from real teachers, information about financial aid options, teacher pay, certification how-to guides, and a personalized to-do checklist. If you have any questions, you can talk to our teacher coaches. Subscribe to get all these resources and more.
You can find out more about how to become a teacher in Missouri by visiting missouri.teach.org. It won't be long until the Missouri General Assembly convenes for its 2022 regular session in January. Education issues are likely to be the subject of considerable discussion, as is the case most years in the Missouri legislature. The MSBA Board of Directors has approved legislative priorities for the session, including opposition to vouchers, tuition tax credits, or other programs that erode support for public schools, opposition to moving school board elections from April to November, and support for the expansion of and access to high-capacity broadband internet services throughout Missouri. Pre-filing of bills for the 2022 session will begin in early December. That's it for this month's edition of the MSBA Board Report. Thanks for allowing us to have some time at your board meeting, and so long from Columbia.
Anything further, Darren?
No, sir.
All right, next up is our visitors forum. We have one speaker this evening, April. You can go up to the podium and, pardon me, you'll have 3 minutes, and there'll be a timer up there if you want to look over there. And
No, it's not a problem. My name is April Faulkner. I'm a resident of Excelsior Springs. I'm also a school bus driver of Bus 19. I was under the impression that after you guys mandated the masks, after giving us all a vote, that I believe you guys have failed us, the majority of the people that have put you in office. We put it 66, 65%. We just wanted a choice. Not do away with them completely, not enforce them completely, just give parents and kids a choice. Whether it be a sensory deprivation, there are all kinds of excuses that we can follow under. Under the masks that I hand out on my bus, half of them do not fit those children's faces correctly. How is that protecting them? Also, if you guys wanted to continue to enforce the mask mandate, which there is none in Clay County, there's none. Richmond doesn't have one, they're doing fine. Hardin, fine. The social interactions and the cues that our children pick up in the mental development of their brains should be way far more important. And you know I'm telling the truth. I have asked my kids on the bus because I'm constantly finding masks on my floor. They don't want to wear them. They hate them. They chew on them constantly all day. How is that healthy? The bacteria that I could send off from these masks would make you sick as a parent or any of you that have children. Out of the 3 doctors up here, are any of you actually medical physicians? Any of you? No. You told me that my daughter's asthma and anxiety wasn't a good enough excuse for not wearing a mask. She's sitting right there. You want to tell it to her face? Because it's enough for me as her mother. Also, if you guys would like to keep enforcing the masks, I ask that you volunteer to go to the bus lot on Friday evenings and go through the buses and pick up those masks because I'm tired of touching them. I'm disgusted. I don't want to touch them. Also, the last thing that I'll address, and I really don't have anything more to say because it's pathetic. We said we were going to discuss this every 30 days. You guys have failed us on that. The book selection in the high school, I got an email. Thank you. I have a son that is a junior.
Same book, probably.
There are 3 books offered to him. Go ask Alice. Some diary of an Indian, true Indian, something. Look it up. The school will tell you. You guys are there. What's the other one?
How it went down. It's right here.
How it went down. That's another good one.
Or sexual conduct or cussing, gang violence, hate against police officers, or white
And it
people.
promotes racism. Last year, during 2020, all of you know what we were going through as a country. But the hate that you get was taught to my son until I begged the
Your
teacher
time's
for
up,
an
man.
alternative book. Save our kids from those books. Go through that library.
All right, next up, the superintendent's report. Dr. Hooks.
All right, thank you. This first up is your monthly enrollment report. Of course, we give you a comparison between now and this time last year. If you notice, our number's a little lower this year than it was last year. The difference continues to be the Job Corps. If you look there, there's 40 kids enrolled in this year. Last year was 119. So that's the main difference you're seeing right now. So that's all I have on enrollment. Does anybody have any questions?
What are you hearing from up there, Doc?
Word is the Job Corps is still closed and they're only processing about 8 kids a day. I don't know why they're only processing that few, but that is all they're getting. So.
Slow. All right, next up, construction update.
I'll be brief here. Elkhorn, and I'm just going to hit the ones as I presented this to you monthly. At Elkhorn, that canopy is now in place. The digital signs, if you've driven by the middle school and the high school, you'll see that those are running. So all the digital signs are complete. And then here's an attachment. It just shows you, this is just a daily report of the baseball project. It is still on track to be completed by Thanksgiving. So they're still moving along to get that turf in place and the new fencing, etc. So that's still on track, but this is just your daily report. So you can see there rain, wet conditions for mid-October, for example. And the report's always about 3 weeks behind because we have board meetings. We have to gather this stuff before the meeting occurs. So, but it's still expected to be completed basically at the end of this month.
Any construction questions on the topic? All right, hearing none, moving to our discussion and action items. Item 1, staying on track stipend. Dr. Hooks.
This is an annual stipend put in place for staff members. And so it was asked of you to put it in place once again this year. This is an opportunity for staff to enrich themselves in the board goals that exist. And this year there's an emphasis on the student performance. Used to you could pick any 2 goals you want. This year you had to pick one of your 2 goals in student performance. And if you notice, there's a lot of options there. And anyway, if staff complete these, get them approved by their supervisor and turned in, they'll receive that stipend for that extra work they've done. So I would ask that you approve this staying on track stipend.
So moved.
We have a first by Kaylin. We have a second by Stephen. Any questions, comments on the stipend? Hearing none, all those in favor? And that passes 7-0. Next up, approval of the 21 bond refinancing resolution. Dr. Hooks.
All right, any time we get a chance to save a little money or increase bonding capacity, We want to look into that. That's what we've recently done here. I'll let Joe Kinder and Ben go over this in more detail, but this is good for the district. It'll save us money and interest over time, as well as increase our bonding capacity. Joe?
Thank you, Dr. Hux. Good to be here, you all. Good to see you all again. I know you've seen Brent Blevins a lot lately, who's one of my partners, but it's good to be back up here in Excelsior and get a chance to see you all and talk to you. I apologize. I'm losing my voice for some reason. I don't really know why that is, but I think it had to do with MSBA this weekend. I guess I was just so excited. But Dr. Hux mentioned this. You know, this is a deal that is a home run in terms of you're going out and you're saving taxpayer dollars. You're increasing your bonding capacity, and you're optimizing your cash flows to hopefully be able to come back sooner rather than later and ask your patrons for a no tax increase if you find that your facilities need those things. And just as a reminder on the bonding capacity, you are limited by the state of Missouri to 15% of your assessed value less your outstanding debt. So anytime that we can reduce the par amount of that outstanding debt, we actually then in turn increase your bonding capacity. Your cash on hand also into your debt service reserve fund counts towards your bonding capacity, so the savings will also go in there. So the end result is almost $1 million more in capacity, which is a great deal for the district, but also saved just shy of $275,000. So well over $250,000 that we talked about, I think, with Dr. Hux here a couple months ago. But really nice deal, and I think you've got, do they have this available, the numbers, Dr. Hux? If not, it's no big deal, I can go over it. But
Do you have that? Did you get that?
Yes.
He can pull it up, I think.
Well, while we're getting it pulled up, I'll just go over a few things. You refunded $5.1 million of debt. You only had to issue $4.485 million. There's a couple reasons behind that. Number one is you've got some additional cash flows this year and the coming years because you had a nice increase in your assessed value. So we want to put that to work so that you're able to go ahead and, like I said, optimize your cash flows and increase your bonding capacity. So the other thing that we did was some reoffering premium. So if you agree to pay a higher interest cost on your bonds than what is the going market rate, investors essentially pay more up front. And what that means is, it doesn't mean any less savings, it just means that you issue less bonds. So we're able to, like I said, issue over $600,000 less debt so that you've got that bonding capacity available to you. As you know, you went up to your bonding capacity with your last issue. So that's almost at nothing right now because that just got done. So we want to try to recoup that as quickly as we can. Number one way you do that is by paying down debt. That's right, I'll just go through it. Our fee is $7.50 per thousand. It's pretty standard for what we've been working with you on, and that again is taking our 250 plus institutional bond salesmen with access to over 200,000 investor accounts. We actually auction off your bonds at $5,000 increments to whoever's willing to pay the highest price. So, you know, when the rubber meets the road, obviously we do a lot of planning with you all and with Dr. Hux, but when the rubber meets the road and it's time for execution, that's what we do. And those salesmen only get to eat if they sell bonds, so the only way they can sell bonds is they get them at the lowest possible rate. And today, Ben Thompson, who's your all special tax counsel, who drafted all the documents for you, offered the opinion these are double tax exempt. I won't steal his thunder. We were pretty amazed to say that you could borrow over $4 million at 0.72%. So nice deal there. Their fee, bond counsel is the other large fee. Of course, they have a lot going on. $30,000. $7.50 per thousand equates to $33,000, a little over $33,000. And then the one number that I would point out to you is the state auditor fee of $1,000. Prior to 2009, that would have been $1 per thousand, so that would have cost you $4,485. So you saved $3,485. That was the brainchild and the effort of a former partner of mine, Greg Bricker, who passed away from cancer in 2016. But in 2009, he worked with the state auditor and some legislators to cap that at $1,000. We just did a $224 million deal for Lee Summit schools. Just as a frame of reference, that would have cost them $224,000 to register your bonds at their bonds at the state auditor, which amounted to about 2 hours worth of work for the state auditor. So he got that capped. Today it puts $3,400 plus back into your accounts to help kids and to help your taxpayers. But this is now year 12, going on year 13 of Greg getting that bill passed, and he's obviously doesn't just help our clients, he's helped kids all across the state of Missouri by giving money back to school districts that really needed to be there. So as long as you'll give me the privilege and pleasure of coming up here and talking to you about this, I will certainly remind you of that story. Greg's a great man, and he was a good mentor of mine. You know, from a comparison standpoint, when that other document, it looks a little bit different. Typically, you see what you are paying, what you would have paid if you wouldn't have refinanced it, and a savings column. And typically, we try to keep those savings columns kind of even every single year. So it looks a lot like if you were just going out and refinancing your mortgage and lowering the interest rate. In this case, you actually, again, you're kicking in $250,000 that we feel good about. That's not stressing your reserves in any way. But then also, we're going to move some of that debt up, and that does two things. Number one, it saves you more money, but number two, it optimizes those cash flows that we were talking about. So it frees up more debt very soon, or frees up more cash flow very soon, because we want to be able to, I know you all want to focus on that no tax increase, right? Not have to increase taxes to be able to do any sort of capital improvements, and that really helps that out so that we're able to optimize that for you. Again, you borrowed money from 2023 to 2027. Those yields came in anywhere from 0.33% to 0.97% for a total bond yield of 0.72% when you average that out. So just a great deal. You were paying 3% on those bonds, so cut that by more than a third. So nice day for the Excelsior Springs School District and for their taxpayers, and happy to be a part of it. And I'll let Councilor Thompson cover the action item.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, Ben Thompson with Gilmore and Bell, District's Bond Counsel. First off, congratulations on a great day in the market. You know, the A+ rating from S&P, it goes to, you know, to show, you know, great leadership from the board and from an administration standpoint. Obviously, the rate of 0.72% for, you know, you're going out 16 years, or actually, no, take that back. You're going out 6 years. 6 years, and you're borrowing, you know, $5 million, $4.4 million, and paying 0.72%. That's amazing. I tell Joe, and we talk about this all the time, that, you know, one of these days rates are going to go up, and we're going to say, man, this was a great deal, and rates are going up. They're just staying low. So really good day for you guys in the market. What you have in front of you is a bond resolution that authorizes the issuance, sale, and delivery of the bonds. It authorizes the execution and delivery of the bond purchase agreement, which is the contract between Stiefel and the district to sell the bonds to Stiefel. And then it also authorizes various other bond documents that we will prepare, you know, we'll put together into a bond transcript, which we compile, put together, and get to the state auditor. We'll get that to the state auditor, you know, a couple weeks before closing. Closing is set for December the 2nd. The state auditor will send us their approval that the bonds comply with state constitutional and state statutory requirements. And then on December the 2nd, Stiefel will fund the $4.4 million to refund those Series 2014 bonds, and we will deliver our bond counsel opinion that the bonds are tax exempt for state and federal tax purposes. So December 2nd is closing. Bond resolution is what you got in front of you. Happy to answer any questions on the legal side or the resolution if anybody has any. If not, that's the action item.
Fantastic. Entertain a motion to approve the 21 bond refinance resolution.
So
First by Stephen, second by Troy. Any questions for either of the gentlemen? Hearing none. All those in favor? That passes 7-0. Thank you, gentlemen, very much. Thank you. Greatly appreciate it. Only I could refinance my house for that, right? All right, next up is approval of the mask gating criteria. Dr. Tomlinson.
Yes, sir. So one of the things the COVID team's been trying to discuss and work out with is how do we get them back out of masks. So we've taken a look at our numbers. What do we have? What kind of justification do we have? What kind of reasoning do we have to go ahead and start trying to move forward? So we wanted to take a look at some different opportunities for putting some numbers to that and having some justification for why we should or should not have masks. I know the team met with Dr. Hux and Mr. Harkins, and we sat and discussed different possibilities and opportunities. We took a look at what some other districts were doing and came up with this gating criteria to try to help make some determinations of hey, how are things going, and at what point do we no longer need to keep doing this? So we've taken a look at our numbers and wanted to put this together, and this kind of gives an idea for how we coordinate, not just with our own numbers here, but also what's going on within the county, and then try to coordinate those two into some determinations of, what are some different levels of what we need to stay healthy and what do we need to comply with as far as county health department. So that's really what the culmination of this document became. And if this were adopted today with our current numbers, if you take a look at our dashboard, I think there's I think we have 4 or 5 positives right now. Is it 4 positives? And I think we have another 4 maybe in quarantine total in the district, somewhere in that ballpark. It's pretty darn low. And we've seen that consistently drop the last few weeks. So we think it's time to start taking a look at what do we do for next steps to move forward. It's similar things that we did last spring when we went from masking to no masking when we started seeing a decline. We're currently in a decline right now, and so we think it's important to take a look at how do we start moving past this.
I would add, if you look on this document here, the bottom half of the page, what Dr. Thompson was talking about, this is an example based on current numbers. If you were to take the, right above the table, students and staff, 0 to 4% being positive or quarantined. To give you an example, for a high school, that's 35. For the Career Center, it's 9, etc. If you go down to the example there, you would see the numbers are obviously well below that, with not more than 1 in any given building. It has been that way for several weeks. And so if you implemented this gating criteria, all the facilities would be in the green, meaning masks would be optional. So if a student or staff member wanted to wear masks, they can, but they wouldn't have to. We've proven out the numbers from the beginning of the year. If at the beginning of the year we were having several quarantines through lunch, because that's that one time of the day kids would be sitting within 3 feet with their masks off. And so, to give an example, Rick, if you had COVID and you guys were sitting next to him, you'd all have to go home, right? So we focused heavily on the 3 feet social distancing, and that's all but reduced our quarantines to 0. Like, we have 4 now, but it's been 0 for several weeks to 5 at the most. So we feel like the social distancing has a really big impact on how we operate in schools, and so we would ask you to consider this masking criteria, if you will. And by the way, this is very similar to what Smithville voted on at their last board meeting and put in place, I believe, November 1st. So they are another school district doing this as well.
Trey, do you want motion and then discussion?
Yeah, let's do it that way.
So moved.
Okay, so we have a first by Rick, a second by Kaylin. Now we'll open it up for comments and discussion.
When do we want to start? When would this start?
This says November the 15th.
Like it says on here?
Well, and that date can be whatever you want it to be. Given that today's the 8th, the 15th is the following Monday, it was, hey, is time needed to communicate it and that sort of thing. But that's up to you. If you want to implement it starting tomorrow, you're more than welcome to. But I think there's some communication that does have to occur. So
another consideration.
Sticking with the date on there.
One more consideration to think about too is there's also areas where we do not have the authority to. So school buses still determined by the federal government. That's not something we are able to change. That's going to stay in place until the federal government removes it.
Yeah, school buses do have a mandate.
In this plan, if you look at it, we can be nimble and adjust, and it can be just one building that may be in the red. So maybe just one building is mask mandatory and the rest don't have to be.
And I think that's a common thing we've seen throughout COVID. Sometimes the high school might have a flare-up or an elementary might have a flare-up at one time, or maybe that's where we have to focus our time instead of having to put the whole district through that.
So.
Now, what was the criteria? Was it at 4%?
4%. If you're 0 to 4, then you can be mask optional. If you're
4 kids per 100.
4.1 up and up, it's mask mandatory.
Yeah, okay.
And that's staff, that's total population of a building.
Oh,
That's not just
everybody,
students, that's
sure.
total population, so.
Does that include non-certified staff?
It does.
Would this allow
Everybody in the
visitors back in the
building,
building as long as they're masked?
Do what, I'm sorry?
Is this gonna allow visitors back in the building?
Limited,
Limited, and then they would need to be, is that what I read in there? They would
yes.
need to-
Yeah.
Visitors would be required to be.
So in order to make this work, the goal is to focus on the other mitigation strategies to keep the quarantines down. So, yeah, still limitations in other aspects, but again, focusing on, the social distancing, the hand cleaning, the ventilation, all those sorts of things.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? We good with the 15th?
I'm good with that.
We had talked about in the COVID meeting, when they asked me to come, we talked different things, and we talked the next day, and it's kind of hard, and it's kind of, they still need to put because some kids are going to want to wear a mask. I mean, some may not, okay? But we still want to give the principals and the building administrators time to kind of prepare and maybe have mask stations, to where there'll be mask out for kids if they want to wear one. So, I mean, just some prep time would be nice instead of springing it on them in the morning, so.
All bus drivers have masks.
Please stop.
All right, so any further comments, questions? All right, so the proposal is to approve the mask gating criteria. Now, if it won't come back, I just want to make sure everybody understands this. This won't come back to us if the high school goes to 42 after Thanksgiving. It doesn't come back to us.
No.
To make, the building principal and the administration
It's
can
the
just go to
document.
mandatory mask.
Right.
This is the policy we're going to follow, okay? Just want everybody to make sure they understand that how it's going to
And I would also
go back
note,
and forth.
our goal, and it reads in this document somewhere, is to be nimble and change with the times, so point is, I'm hoping sooner than later, there's not even a need for this, right?
Yeah.
Or, our goal is to focus on that social distancing and other mitigation strategies to keep the quarantines down. In COVID, there's never been so many positives in a school that you couldn't have school. It wasn't the positives. It was the quarantines. It was the fact that one kid that went to 7 different classes caused 50 kids to be quarantined for 2 weeks. And so we feel like through practice that we've had these first few months of the year that we've been able to all but eliminate quarantines due to the social distancing piece. We're obviously just playing within the rule book that's created by the local public health agency that we do have to follow. So, and I feel like we've got a good setup.
Good. All right. Having heard all of that, all those in favor? And that passes 7-0 to go into effect November the 15th. All right. Last item of discussion is staff bus driver incentive. Dr. Tomlinson.
Right, so one of the things that we've taken a look at is how do we alleviate some of our staffing shortages? And one of those opportunities, I was working with Kim Green of Apple Bus and Joe Grime, our athletic director, to take a look at could we have a staff incentive program that might get some of our current school staff to also help out with driving. So we tried to put together a plan that we thought would incentivize, but also be good for the district as well. So we took a look at coming up with a plan that would create a stipend for any employee who wanted to go and get their CDL, as provided, the training's provided for free by Apple Bus. In fact, they also get paid for it. In addition to that, they would also get a stipend if they remain on as an active driver each semester. So they could get up to $500 stipend for getting their CDL with the S endorsement, as well as another $500 stipend each semester they're actively driving for the district. Where we see this probably having the biggest impact is probably going to be with coaches driving their own sports. So if I'm going there anyway, why not go ahead and drive the bus? You'll say, well, how does that help with our routes? Well, here's why, because a lot of those activity programs leave at the end of the day. And if we take a route driver to go on an activity trip, then there's nobody to drive that route. If the coach can take that trip, that driver can stay on that route. So now we do have the expectation that if there is a real shortage or an emergency or some kind of issue comes up, we might have to pull people to go fill in here and there. But that's not going to be the norm. That's going to be if we're really in a pinch. But this was the plan we came up with. Currently, we kind of screened some people ahead of time to see what the interest might be. There's about 14 coaches that have expressed interest, at least to start. We'll see how many of those will actually follow through the process and get it all done. But we're looking at, after benefits, everything else, $15,000 to $20,000 potential budget impact.
This is a program I put in place in Raytown prior to COVID. It gets harder and harder to find bus drivers every year. It's a split shift job. You're driving a house. You're trying not to be hit by people who are looking at their phones instead of the road. You have student management, all that going on at the same time. And so this is a opportunity for us to fill that gap. And the other thing about hiring too, you might start out the year with the appropriate number of drivers, but as one leaves for one reason or another, you can't hire a driver immediately. It takes several weeks. Most of them aren't trained, so there's training, there's the fingerprinting, and so the gap just grows throughout the year. And so basically what this can do is cover that gap so that we're not in a pinch and we're not having to say no. I've always said the most important job in the school district is not yours and it's not mine, it's the school bus driver. Because if the kids don't come to school, none of our jobs matter, right? So we want to make sure we get our kids to school, and I think this is a great stopgap.
Something used to be fairly common here.
Yeah. When we were in
Our
school,
band
back in the
director
day.
always drove us everywhere.
Yeah, essentially, this is the 1950s model of school bus driving.
I'm not that old, Travis.
Yes, I know. Would you turn 29 again? But we do remember that. I remember that as a youngster. The school bus driver might even take a school bus home, right? And so, but when I was a principal at Hearns Elementary in Charleston, the coach would drive the bus to school. He'd get off the bus with the kids, go in and teach PE all day, get on the bus with the kids and drive them home. And, that was a good model. And so that's basically what this is re-implementing that model.
So moved.
All right, we have a first by Rick, a second by Troy. Any questions, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor? And that passes 7-0. All right, that was our last item. Entertain a motion to adjourn. First by Kaylin. Second by Stephen. All those in favor? That passes 7-0. Thank you all for coming out this evening. Have a good night.
You don't want to drive.
You don't want me to.
I wouldn't do it.
Better way to say it.